Hello again. This video is intended for a very specific audience, Maryland voters. If you are not from Maryland and have never voted there, then probably shouldn't watch this video. I mean, you could, but it'd be a waste of your time. Today I want to ask something specifically of the electorate in Maryland, and that is, why did you elect Martin O'Malley governor? Twice, I might add. Here's what I want to know. The other night, I saw Martin O'Malley, your governor, go on the record with Greta Van Susteren. Here's a clip.
Joining us is Maryland's Governor Martin O'Malley. Nice to see you, Governor.
Greta, good to see you.
Governor, I think we should probably start with you're one of the few states with a AAA, right?
That's right. We're one of 8 states that's made the tough decisions on cuts and revenues time and again to maintain a AAA bond rating.
How long have you had that? Is that a long-term thing with Maryland?
It is a long-term thing with Maryland. You know, our state and also on the other side of the Potomac in Virginia, we've both been very fiscally disciplined, and it's something that Maryland is very, very proud of. I mean, we have the #1 schools in America and a lot of other great things going for us, but we understand that fiscal responsibility is like maintaining the rudder of that ship, and so that's what we've always done.
Okay, now I found that interesting because if you live in Maryland, then you know or should know that Martin O'Malley has not exactly been fiscally responsible. He certainly hasn't been a fiscal conservative. He hasn't governed that way, but from what I know of his record, he has definitely not been fiscally responsible. Ever since he got in, it's been tax and spend all the way. He's raised personal and corporate income taxes, as well as the sales tax and other state taxes. He received an F, one of only 8 governors to receive an F on the Cato Institute's biennial fiscal report card in 2008. So it seems kind of interesting that he would be, touting his state as an example of fiscal conservatism. His successor, who I will get to a little bit later, was a fiscal conservative. And he mentioned that Maryland's bond ratings, AAA bond rating, is, which is obviously, is at risk right now. They're at risk of losing that, has been something they've had for a long time. So he's basically taking credit, or sounds like he's taking credit for really the sound governance of those who held office before him. But that wasn't even the most objectionable thing he said. Well, that wasn't objectionable. This is what I mainly took issue with. Take a look at this.
Problem here, this deficit is a self-inflicted wound. 55% of the deficit is caused by Bush-era tax cuts that primarily benefited the most wealthy.
And the other 45%?
Well, the other 13% of it is 2 wars that the president.
And who gets it? You're giving that to President Bush too?
I am.
Okay.
And in fact, had those wars had to be financed.
I don't want to get into a sort of a whole match.
No, it's not about history, really. It's about the future, Greta.
All right. Yeah, I'm actually sort of trying to understand the problem. And so let's get beyond.
Did you hear what he said? The deficit is a self-inflicted wound, and then he went on to say that 55% of it is caused by Bush-era tax cuts that mainly benefited the rich or something. Basically, he just went on a stream of left-wing talking points blaming everything on George W. Bush when we know... Well, here's what we do know. Let's look at the facts. I have here something from the CBO's website, and this is changes in the CBO's baseline projection since 2001, January. Even if you believe that the Bush tax cuts created huge deficits, or that our deficits, we lost out on a lot of revenue because of the Bush tax cuts, again, assuming that the economy would have done just as well during the Bush years without the tax cuts. Even if you believe that, then I still don't see how you get to 55%. When he says 55% of our deficit is created by the Bush-era tax cuts, the deficit last year was $1.3 trillion. All right? So he says so maybe he's talking about the deficit this year, which is projected to be $1.4 trillion. But let's talk about last year, since those are actual numbers. This is actual data we have. Even assuming that the Bush tax cuts cost us all this revenue that we would have gotten because the economy would have done just as well without the tax cuts in place, even assuming that the lost revenues, according to the CBO, for just fiscal year 2010, caused by the Bush tax cuts, both rounds, 2001 and 2003, total $180 billion. $180 billion out of what ended up being a $1.3 trillion deficit. The additional spending from the Bush tax cuts, from things like refundable tax credits, accounted for only $11 billion in additional outlays. Again, a change from the CBO's baseline. So that's $191 billion. And that, you will notice, does not come close to 55% of the deficit. In 2011, since we extended the Bush tax cuts, the lost revenues projected for this year, the change, are projected to total $113 billion, and then the additional outlays will account for just $12 billion worth of that deficit. So we're only talking about, let's see here, 10%, less than 10%, less than 9% also, 8.9% of the deficit is caused by the Bush tax cuts. Again, that's a very high estimate as far as that. So it's really interesting that he's probably right about the war. In fact, I think the war on terror accounts for far more than 13% of our deficit. It's hard to tell that from here because when they list changes to outlay projections, and remember this was made obviously before, this is the change from the baseline projections that were made in 2001 before September 11th, before the war on terror. They lump all changes in discretionary spending together. And so all I know is that for fiscal year 2010, just 2010, mind you, the difference between what the CBO projected discretionary spending in 2010 would total and what we ended up spending is $546 billion. And for this year, it's projected to be $523 billion. That is just enormous. So, and I know this started off as a thing about Martin O'Malley, but what he said was just so outrageous that I feel like I have to go into some detail here. So O'Malley just is flat wrong when he talks about what the largest contributors are of our to our deficit. But he is right about it being a self-inflicted wound. Now, this is where he just flies off the handle, I guess you could say. Take a look at what he says next.
Look, there's two ways that we can kill this fragile jobs recovery. One is to needlessly drive the country into default, which fortunately we avoided.
Except that, let me just say that.
But the other way is into massive public sector cuts. I mean, look at the job creation over the last several months. Private sector's been creating jobs. Public sector's been shedding jobs.
Oh, wait, let's stop for a second.
Yeah, let's stop for a second. Think about what he just said. The private sector has been creating jobs, the public sector has been shedding them, which is true. Every month for more than a year now, non-farm payrolls in the private sector have increased. But every month, the government has lost jobs. Government jobs, the payrolls in the government have gone down. Yet he's saying that one of two things that would, in his words, kill this fragile jobs recovery is massive public sector cuts. For those of you who don't know what cognitive dissonance is, this is it. Holding two seemingly inconsistent beliefs at the same time, and then just expressing them, saying them pretty much seamlessly, one right after the other. He's acknowledging that the government's been shedding jobs while the private sector's been adding them every month for more than a year now, and yet the obvious conclusion from that is that this recovery is driven by the private sector, by growth in private sector employment, yet he's saying we should not cut public sector spending because that would kill this fragile recovery. It doesn't make any sense. It just I can't believe this guy. Competent. So I ask the people of Maryland, why did you reelect this guy? I'm specifically curious about that because you elected him in 2006. People, you can make mistakes, but by 2010 you knew what a horrible governor he was. Why did you reelect him? And don't say it's because he was better than the alternative, because the Republican candidate for governor in 2010 in Maryland was the same guy who O'Malley had defeated in 2006. Bob Ehrlich. You compare Bob Ehrlich's record with O'Malley's record. Bob Ehrlich cut taxes. He held the line on spending. Spending went up under Ehrlich because the state was flush with cash revenue. Okay, he was governor from 2003 to 2007. Nearly every state in the country went crazy then because the economy was booming and the treasury, the state's coffers were full. But consider, for example, their jobs record. I want you to take a look at this graph, or I'm going to show you a couple of graphs. This first one, this is unemployment, the number of unemployed persons in the labor force in Maryland under Governor O'Malley. No, actually, it goes from Governor Ehrlich to Governor O'Malley. Just take a look at this. Okay, I apologize for the weird-looking photos. That wasn't something I did on purpose. That was just how my computer changed them when I cut and pasted them onto the graph. But did you see that? Take a look at this other graph too. This one with this is the unemployment rate in Maryland under Governor Ehrlich compared with Governor O'Malley. You see? Under Governor Ehrlich, Maryland, during the 4 years he was governor, added 148,000 jobs in the 4 years he was governor. 148,000 jobs. In the 4 years, the first 4 years, in Governor O'Malley's first term, from 2007 to 2011, same time span, Maryland lost 50,000 jobs. So nearly 150,000 jobs added in 4 years under Governor Ehrlich, 50,000 jobs lost net in 4 years under Governor O'Malley. Now, I should point out that part of that is affected by revised population controls, but please, Marylanders, why did you reelect this man? Why? I just really like to know. Well, I guess that's it. I've been posting a lot this weekend, but well, I start law school back later this month, and so I'm not going to have as much time to devote to my website and stuff like this, which may be a good thing. But please, Marylanders, let me know. Also, do check out my website, and until next time, don't mess with the right-wing genius.